Hello everybody and welcome to my latest video in my political ideas playlist, and again we're looking at nationalism, this time in relation to the state. And nationalism is our non-core ideology which we'll be using in component 2. So when it comes to state, we get lots of different types of state with nationalistic ideology and nationalistic governments. So it doesn't point to a single type of government, though there are some really kind of central concepts in this one, particularly the nation state, which we'll look at later in the video. So some nationalists favour democracy and some most definitely do not. Nationalism can be seen as central to the creation of empires with expansionistic, chauvinistic nationalism, but it also can be seen with the anti or post-colonial nationalism as key to the dismantling of those empires as well. And self-determination is a really key idea, and that's what we're going to start with, or what we're going to look at in the next part of the video. So self-determination, this is a really important idea when it comes to nationalism. It stems from the Enlightenment and the Enlightenment ideas and the writings of people like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And in this period, people sought self-determination, and these ideas influenced revolutions in France, revolutions in America, leading to American independence. And particularly because of the writings of the likes of Rousseau, this kind of linked the ideas of liberalism and democracy to the ideas of nationalism. And this link is then also re-established when empires fell, when the Ottoman Empire, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire fell, and you've got nations seeking self-determination. Then same again later on again when things like the British Empire collapse, and you've got nations demanding self-determination. Now, one of the key moments in all of this is at the end of World War I. And in it, Woodrow Wilson, who was the American president at the time, set some key principles. So he said any recognizable nation that aspires to self-government should be granted it as a starting point. And then from that, all states that have gained this self-determination should have their sovereignty respected by others. So if you've got a recognizable nation and it wants to run its own affairs, wants to be sovereign, then it should be given that sovereignty, and all other states should allow that sovereignty, should recognize it. And if anyone does threaten the sovereignty of these nations, that should be considered a threat to the whole of the international community, and therefore there's demand for some kind of collective action to prevent it. And these ideas were key in the League of Nations, which was set up following World War I, though very unsuccessfully, and then the far more kind of significant and long-lasting United Nations that followed the end of World War II. So self-determination is a really important part of nationalism, and we see this across all different forms and in different writers as well. So for example, if we think even of Herder, and he's writing about nationalism in terms of language, well, he was talking about the German language as a starting point, and the desire for creation of a nation state for Germany was one of the driving forces at that time as well. So a really important starting point, and it also links into our next bit, because what self-determination tends to lead to is the creation of nation states. And nation states combine the idea of nationhood, or a kind of collective identity, with a solid political unit. And in this, we then get a nation that is both a group held together by language or culture or ethnicity or common history or religion, or a combination of some or all of those, not necessarily all of, but at least a combination of some of them, with a kind of sovereign political unit. And forming a nation state can be seen as key to the self-determination that we've been looking at and was seen as such by a lot of anti or post-colonial nationalists who were trying to stamp the identity of their nation and their independence. Liberal internationalists talk about a world made up of independent nation states and sees this a way to peace and prosperity in the future, kind of end of it. Again, a kind of an anti-empire idea that you've got these smaller nation states that work collaboratively together. Conservative nationalists see nation states as a cohesive unit that is bound together, and again, something that they aim for, something that they would see as an ideal. Even with chauvinistic nationalists or chauvinistic nationalism, they also see that the nation state is an ideal. I mean, one of the things that separates them from the other nationalists is they see it as an ideal for normally themselves and other nations they consider to be developed or strong, and then they think that there are other groups or nations that don't deserve a nation state, and they want to expand and rule over them and create empire, etc. But for all kind of forms of nationalism, we really see the nation state as a key kind of cornerstone, a kind of a central pillar running through the different ideas. Even if the nation states they want to create might be very, very different, that we do see this concept as a nation state as a really central one. But we do get huge variations within those nation states, and that can be the form of government, but it can also be the form of the nation. So, for example, some states are multinational, and this includes the United Kingdom and the Russian Federation. I mean, obviously, the United Kingdom want to be more familiar to you. So you've got this idea of Britain or the United Kingdom, but in it you've got the English nation, the Scottish nation, the Welsh nation, and sometimes we see a nation that exists within another nation state. And again, we see that with the UK. So the Scottish and Welsh nations exist inside the UK. Now, Scottish or Welsh nationalists may or may not seek independence. I mean, it tends to be a much stronger theme running through Scottish nationalism than it does through Welsh nationalism, but it is present in both. But they will both seek respect for their own language and culture, and we've seen a lot of that played out in the UK through devolution, though demands for independence, particularly from Scotland, remain. Right, some nations, again, are even more complicated picture, that they don't contain a single kind of national identity. And some really good ones to think about on this are the US and South Africa. So in the US, you see some really interesting things with identity, national identity. So often there's a prefix to people's national identity in America. They're often something American, be that African American, Black American, Irish American, Italian American, and so we've got a nation that is built on more than the kind of what we would traditionally think as of those kind of core concepts of a nation. And we see this very much in South Africa as well. It's often referred to as a phrase that came from Nelson Mandela as the rainbow nation, where they kind of take great pride of the fact that they're full of lots of different national groups, different languages, different cultures, and the idea, and they celebrate their diversity. So the patriotism in these different nations, it might well come from pride in the state, in the institutions, and the ideology, and that's very much the case in America, where it's all kind of looking at the history and the founding fathers and the Constitution and the President and Congress and the Supreme Court, and so patriotic feeling can be pride in the nation as its political entity and its and the things that it does in the world, rather than necessarily all the stuff on shared culture and tradition and language necessarily. But there tends to then be an adoption of the culture and language of people who join the nation. And the patriotism can also be based on diversity, and again, it's something you'll see in South Africa very strongly, the idea of the rainbow nation, and something you see in America as well, this idea of America as the melting pot of the rest of the world, and again, celebration of diversity in that. Obviously, not a diversity celebrated by all Americans, and America has various forms of nationalism within it, but again, so the nation states are not necessarily a unified thing. So the nation states we thought of on an earlier part of the video, in terms of where it combines not only the state bit but alongside the shared tradition and culture and language and all the rest of it. Well, not all states work like that. Some are multinational, some are smaller nations that exist within that bigger one. Some don't really have a single national identity at all, but a multitude of national identities, but still a really strong feeling of nationalism and pride in amongst all of that. Right, so thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, and if you haven't done already, please subscribe. Help me keep going, making all these different videos for particularly A-level politics. So we're going to end up with a full playlist with not only all the core ideologies for component 1, but we're going to make sure we've got a full set on nationalism for component 2 as well. So as I said, please like, please subscribe. Leave me any comments and I will try and get back to you and respond, and hopefully this has been helpful to you in understanding nationalism in the state, and look at a playlist for nationalism and all the different aspects of it, and the same for liberalism, conservatism and socialism. Right, thank you very much for watching.